consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages into the universe between your ears. Our mission: to explore collective wisdom, seek out amazing secrets, and spread the message of personal potential.
Hello, everybody out there. Thank you for joining us. I am Tim C. Starr, your host for The Universe Between Your Ears, joined, as always, by Mr. Gabby Mosheyev, my co-host.
Not as always turned out, right?
Almost always.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So this I think we're going to have a good time with this one. Our guest today is an intuitive coach specializing in parenting and self-exploration. She does angel card and oracle card readings, emotional clearing sessions, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and specialized coaching for parents and families. I think we'll stop there. I was going to pull something off of the webpage that I saw, but I think we'll start there. So Anna Marie Rhodes, right? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have your smiling face on the show. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about how you came to be doing what you're doing.
Okay.
But let's talk a little bit first, I think, about what you're doing.
Okay.
Because one of the things that you said in jumping through the hoops that we made you jump through to get on here is, your favorite topic is the way we program our children.
Yes.
And when I read that, I thought, oh, Gabby's going to want this one. He's going to want to be a part of it. So, can you want to elaborate on that a little bit and sort of?
Sure, absolutely.
What the heck?
Well, by the time we're 7 years old, we choose the mask that we're going to wear into the world. We choose how we're going to cope. We choose what our main core programs are. Before we hit the age of 7, of course, we're taking on a lot of what our parents are saying. There's still some free will, obviously, that's there. And some children are more resistant to it than others. But for most of us, we take on not only the genetic coding of our parents, but we also take on their limiting beliefs about money, about emotions, about relationships, about our ability to succeed. And no matter how many times our parents tell us, well, you can be, do, or have anything that you want, their actions and how they're living their lives always impact what we actually believe to be true about that. So we may have lots of different warring programs going on in our mind. When you first hear a topic or first hear something like money doesn't grow on trees, it may not solidify right away. It's either going to happen via repetition or traumatic experience. And of course, for a child, that traumatic experience may seem completely tiny to an adult. For instance, if a little girl walked into the room and was dancing and singing and her father was a little bit too sharp with her after a long day at work, that could be a traumatic experience enough to keep her from ever singing again, or to keep her from ever being an extrovert again. So either trauma or repetition is going to create a belief. That belief, once it solidifies and becomes a part of our subconscious, becomes a part of our reactionary nature, is what we call a program. Something that is automatically always running in the background that will control what it is that we do, think, say throughout the day if we're not conscious and aware of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought you were going to say.
All of that, you had all.
Yeah, word for word.
Right.
This is a subject that comes up pretty regularly in our discussions here.
Yes.
One thing that you did mention that I don't think we've ever talked about as a piece of this before, and Gabby, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's ever been stated that, the obvious thing is what you learn these things from your parents by what they tell you, but then the modeling that they do, if that's other than what they're telling us, that really is more important.
Well, you have to get into the topic of vibration there even, because not only what they do, but also their vibrational alignment. Children are so impressionable that their vibrational alignment is going to be affected by your vibrational alignment. So even before a child is born in womb, you can be affecting your child, their developmental ability, and their health, different things like that, simply by altering your vibrational alignment, and which will then cause their vibrational alignment to change as well. When you start getting into the emotion code and removing trapped emotions, many children or adults will have trapped emotions dating back to 25 generations before that has been encoded literally in the DNA, in the genetic makeup of a person.
That's fascinating. Yeah. When you were saying impressionable about our children, I'm reminded of many cases when some kids, no matter what kind of adversity they've been put through, somehow come out on top and become kind and loving individuals, while others still in the loving and nurturing environments become really dishonest and rotten individuals. How would you explain that?
So the way that it has been kind of revealed to me, and it makes sense to me, is that if you look at us all like a chain link fence, right? Some of us are born with certain weak links and certain strong links. Now, given the same exact situation at the same exact time for each individual child, one child may have a weak link that breaks and they snap and their personality changes, whereas another child is stronger in that area. But if something else had happened to that child, something completely different that had affected one of their weak links, they may have taken a different path as well. And so people have to understand that while we are all very similar, we are so different that both nature and nurture always affect both. There also has to be an understanding that we each come to Earth with a specific mission. Older souls do take on more baggage genetically, more limiting beliefs, more struggle in order to heal it. So it's much easier for an older soul most of the time to go down a darker path simply because they have so much more heaped upon them, even just genetically. Even if they're brought up in a loving home, if they're never taught how to deal with these emotions that they struggle with, you know, what are they going to do?
So it's really like impressionable, but in what area, right? So know your child, listen to your child and learn and see, because they don't come with user guides, right? So
no, they don't.
And really just they will reveal, and sometimes they won't, but you know, and it could be too late before you find out that one conversation you had actually made a huge traumatic impact, right?
When you understand that your child's emotional world is just as real as yours, that changes everything. For instance, if I talk to parents all the time about like children having temper tantrums in Walmart or a big store, and I say, okay, well, when's the last time that you had a temper tantrum? When's the last time that you went to a store and you were rude to a lady who was working there because you were in a bad mood? And you don't even know how to control your emotions, but you get upset when your child has an emotional breakdown instead of walking your child through what's going on. Like, why are they feeling that way and how to handle that emotion?
Another piece of it is that, you know, like to use the example you gave, Anna Maria, about the father being a little sharp with the daughter. Maybe he's not sharp about how he responds, but that doesn't matter. It's how she perceives his response that determines. Right? You still with us?
Yes.
Yeah. You're breaking
Absolutely.
up.
A little echo.
Okay. Yeah.
I am.
So, yeah. So that's, you know, so there is no perfect way of doing this stuff, you know, or no foolproof way. So we just had some technical difficulties here, some bandwidth issues, I think. So Anna Marie, what I had commented on was the idea that it doesn't even matter how the adult responds or what the adult says to the child, or at least not nearly as much as what the child actually perceives was said,
Yes.
how it was said.
Yes. So,
Back
for
when I
instance,
couldn't understand anything you were saying. So,
right. So, for instance, there was a story that I was told when I was a child, where when I was being born, my parents assumed that I was a boy. They called me Jonathan Marcus up until the day that I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was told that story, I inferred that my parents wanted a boy. So when my parents started having marital troubles, I blamed it on myself because I wasn't a boy. Now, that wasn't true. I went out and bought a pink watch the day that I was born. They were very happy. But my perception based on a story that was told was something completely different. And so the idea there is that always being conscious, or being conscious as often as possible, is important. But being willing to walk your children through how to deal with emotions, how to deal with things that hurt them, how to deal with sadness or anger, how to talk to you when those things are going through their mind is imperative. Because when a child trusts you completely, when a child respects his or her parents completely, you with those persons, let it out, and then it doesn't sit in their system for 25, 40, 60 years.
right.
System for forever. That I tell people, it's like if you get a splinter and you don't do anything about it, it's going to affect. Most adults are walking around with anywhere between 150,000 actions that they didn't deal with. So as long as we're teaching our children, as long as we're calm words, and then willing to teach our children, this is how to deal with this. Be mad at me, be angry, let it out. Okay, now you're good. Then it won't sit and it won't fester for that length of time.
Yeah.
Any suggestions for the scenario where the parents aren't aware that the child, even the child may not even be aware that they're bothered by something?
Well, a child always acts out. Everything that, if a child is ever upset, you'll notice they start acting out. They'll become sullen. Most parents' response to a sullen or angry child is frustration. But usually when a child is exhibiting those emotional symptoms, or maybe they even stop cleaning their room, maybe they start bedwetting, maybe they start having fits when they're out in public, all of those are symptomatic. And so when a parent is open to noticing symptoms and then being willing to create a conversation about those symptoms instead of getting frustrated, instead of trying to force their child into being okay, that's how we correct that. Because that child, that little girl, is going to respond. Maybe she'll stop singing and dancing. And if a dad is conscious, he'll notice, okay, last week she was singing a lot more. Last week she was like bursting into the room. Why isn't she doing it this week? He would be able to then go to her and, say, what's going on? And even if she isn't willing to share with him, maybe an appropriate response for that father would be to dance with her or to ask her to sing with him. Both of those things would begin correcting that issue, even if he doesn't know the exact moment that created the issue.
If I may, Tim.
Yep, I can see you.
You know what always was fascinating to me is just how little attention is paid to all this science of parenting by the society, right? And everybody kind of, in our society, we kind of respect the parents' right to raise their children as they wish, right? And this is, and the parents are very protective of that right?
Right.
I'm going to do this is my creation,
Right.
And I'm going to do and handle this the way I can and the way my mom and dad taught me and whatever, right? And it's only now it's starting to come out when like the spiritual teachers are telling us, these children, they're not your creations.
Right.
They are here, and your role here is to make sure you just kind of take care of them, like make sure they're clothed and fed and protected, right?
Right.
But their own souls that came here into this world not to please you or
right.
satisfy you,
right,
or to be someone you want them to be. They're here for their own journey, right? And you have to respect
exactly.
that. And that shift is just so difficult because I'm constantly dealing with this, right? So difficult for some parents to make. There's like, oh yeah, right, you just think that way, and you'll find your child's, becoming a drug addict, or right. get involved with some bad company or whatever. No. You have to have tough discipline and make sure that they are in line, whatever. And what is your take on this? How is the society dealing with this, and what are you seeing from your perspective?
I don't believe in forcing parents into doing this, because there's a very real truth that we're all doing the very best we can with what we know. So my biggest thing is with people I take into my parenting coaching program, it's people that want to change. They know that their children have their own path, and they want to help their children remain in their genius. But for everyone else, I like to focus on showing them where they were hurt, why they were hurt, what it is that's causing them to go from meaningless job to meaningless job, or meaningless relationship to meaningless relationship. And when we can show parents, this is where this came from. This is why you are so unsuccessful, or you're struggling, or you're hurting. This is why you can't control your emotions or what's going on in your life. Then they'll start to connect the dots. Okay, this is because my parents didn't understand me, but I'm doing this to my kids too. And if I'm doing this to my kids are going to grow up exactly like me, and I do not want that. And when we begin showing compassion for parents instead of judgment, parents are much more open to listening. And that's true with everything. When we just judge people, they're not open to change. But when we show compassion and we begin to help them heal, miracles happen and the doors open.
Yeah, that's so true. The approach, and so really that's the only way to get through, right? All other attempts will be rejected.
Right.
So
I'm glad you said that piece, because Gabi, as you were talking about the utopian version, what's going into my head is it doesn't matter. You could force parents to parent in certain areas in certain ways, but if they're not doing it willingly, then what Anna Marie, what you were saying earlier, is going to come into play, and it's that inner angst about it, that inner dislike is going to show through, and it's not going to work anyway.
Well, I was talking with someone about taking care of the homeless yesterday, and the comment that I made was, changing laws changes nothing. It's when we change hearts and minds that we change everything. So most people have this so backwards. They try to go to political rallies and they want to force parents never to spank, or they want to force parents to vaccinate, or they want to force this or force that. And the reality is that it's not helpful. Changing the laws doesn't stop people from being who they are, but changing who a person is makes it to where if we for one generation taught each child to stand in their genius, allowed them not to be out of control, but to be who they were meant to be, there would no longer be murder, because no child would grow up wanting to murder people. Like, they wouldn't have that anger and hatred in their heart. You also have to understand that unconditional love and acceptance of people in who they are would also allow for that to happen. We can't, there's such a fine line there, but when we choose to approach people with compassion and a desire to heal them, a desire to help them, a desire to nurture them, that's when we make a difference.
What you said here was so profound, because you put it in such beautiful phrase about changing hearts and minds. You know, what better time to start this, you know, when you are just becoming a young parent, and you have this potential to make this new creation into an accomplished, fulfilled, happy individual, right? Or you could just totally mess it up, right? So, you know, but there's still a way to, you know, the transformation might happen later in life. It's just you're delaying this, right?
Right.
Or it may never happen. Who knows? You know, as it often sometimes, you know, I see that people reach, you know, all the years in their lives, and they're miserable or depressed or whatever, and this signifies that investing in early education, you probably will also agree to this, right? The society could do so much more by investing in early education, and by education I don't mean propaganda, or trying to raise them to be conform
employees, right?
I don't want to be misinterpreted here, but to be creative, free, and compassionate and kind beings, you know. And then I think that's the fastest way to transform the whole society, honestly.
And starting with children, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. When do we understand this? Are we on our way? You know, what are you seeing? You know, what's your thinking on?
You know, I'm very excited because I'm seeing so many more people right now awakening to the fact that they're empathic, awakening to the fact that they're channelers, that they're light bearers of some sort, like workers of some sort. So many of the parents that come to me, it turns out that they have some type of budding psychic ability that's trying to awaken, and they want to be healers. And the beauty of children is that children redeem us. Children are the redemption of our lineage. That's why so many parents have, even fathers have postpartum depression or different things, because there's so much that's coming to the surface to be cleansed. And if you look at the world today, just like in an individual, the collectives are experiencing a mass cleansing. That's why all this baggage is coming to the surface, so that we can get rid of it once and for all. But there are so many teachers coming to light, so many people who are spiritual healers and spiritual teachers. We're heading into very interesting times. The beautiful thing is, as parents begin to change, and I'm seeing so many parents who say, you know what, I need help. I need help for me because I'm a mess. And I need help for me, for my kids, because I'm passing my mess on to them. And as people become willing to be open to do something different, our world is changing little by little. I love the story of the guy who talks about the starfish on the beach and how he's throwing them back into the water one by one. And someone comes along and says, why are you doing this? It doesn't matter. There are so many, you'll never make a difference. And the man says, well, it makes a difference to this one. And the beauty is that even if we change one life or two life or three lives, and there are so many more people who are making that difference now than I can even describe, when we change even one, we change the entire world, because you never know how many people they're going to impact. And we're in a time of life coaches and healers and everybody coming forward, because the planet is raising its vibration. We are moving into the fourth and eventually the fifth dimension. So we are entering a time where light and dark are beginning to separate. And it's a beautiful thing.
And these lessons, I might add, they are not just now localized, they're shared across, right?
Yes.
And further kind of magnifying their impact, right?
Absolutely.
I recently laughed at one Facebook posting that our neighbor here shared with us, and she shared, and there were like immediately like almost 100 likes, like within 30 minutes, you know. So her little son, who is maybe like, I don't know, 8 or 10, whatever, found a little bug, some kind of a beetle, some insect on the carpet, and so he took the bug and he started dressing to go out to release the bug out to the street, and mom is asking, "Oh, be careful, you know, it might bite you. So what you gonna do? Flush it down the toilet?" It's like, no, I feel bad for the guy. And so he takes him out carefully, gently, right? And so she shares this story, right?
Right.
With all the parents, and she then just adds, like, I love his, you know, this kindness, and you know, I never taught him, but it's just in him inherently. It's there, you know, and I just love it about him. So it's so kind. And all these moms are starting to bring up their stories, right? And all, you know, and I'm just looking at this posting, and just from that message, I feel so uplifted, right? And that's the power. Now they say, why am I saying this? This kind of has this effect, right?
Ripple effect, yeah.
Ripple down effect, right? But there's science that says to us that humanity, right, pay much more attention to negativity and negative stories, right? And they, and this is explained psychologically, right? I guess because of our survival instincts, right? We'd rather hear about some loose, you know, elephant that is running our way, and because
our ego feels the need to be needed,
to protect, right? Exactly,
right.
And so we react very quickly to the negativity, and it's only now that we are changing these patterns, right?
Right.
And so it's fascinating. There was no question in that. I wanted to comment.
I was going to actually say it actually has a lot to do with our natural state is love. Yeah. And the ego doesn't take over until around 7 or 8 years old. Before 7 or 8, the ego knows that it's subservient to the spirit. But at that point, at around 7 or 8, usually the ego takes over out of fear. So, but our natural state is love. So I tell my clients and my followers all the time, you know, all this is just a grand play with a call back to love. Everything that's happening in your life is calling you back to love, your source, your origin.
Wow, that's beautiful. Many spiritual teachings are saying the same, becoming one with the source, you know, coming back. You know. So tell us, Anna Marie, how did you stumble upon this? How did you find your passion? Tell us about yourself a little bit, and to our listeners as well.
Well, it's kind of a fun story. Well, not really, but
whether it's fun.
Right. I grew up in the South, so I grew up in a very strict, you know, spiritual Christian community, Pentecostal and Baptist, and those denominations. So most of what I'm doing now, back then I would have thought was evil, so that's fun. But and I still believe a lot of the things that I believed then, but 3 years ago, I had made a lot of changes just because I was around many different types of people, and something kept calling me to the book, The Secret. It was the first personal development book I'd ever read. I'd been trying and failing in a couple of different network marketing companies, so I picked up this book, The Secret, at a used bookstore, and I read it, and the first thing I asked to manifest was I wanted my favorite song, which never plays on the radio, to play on the radio. 2 minutes later, it played on the radio. It's like, okay, maybe this is a thing. So the next thing that I asked for was a car, a specific car, and it drove by about an hour later. I was like, okay, I'm sold. So I started picking up, similar books. The next key one that I picked up was Abraham Hicks, Ask and It Is Given. When I was in the introduction, when they were explaining who Abraham was, immediately my spirit guides introduced themselves to me. And they said, we are Methuselah. You've talked to us your entire life. So growing up, I had frequently talked to who I believed to be God, and sometimes it was God. And I was very, the veil to the spirit realm was always very thin for me. Demons used to come in my bedroom, darker spirits used to come in my bedroom, and I would have to make them leave. They stopped bothering me after a time. But so all of this started making sense. It was like, okay, so I have spirit guides that I've talked to my entire life. This is who they are. And this means that I'm also capable of channeling. Around that same time, I got involved with a group that did coaching. I got a coach. And I knew that I was empathic. I don't even remember how I found out that I was empathic, but I recognized that one of the reasons I had always struggled with being hyper emotional was because I was feeling everyone's emotions and I didn't know what to do with it. So all of this kind of came out around the same time, and it was just this massive explosion of information about who I was and what was going on. And so I got a coach and I said, okay, this is awesome, but I should be using this skill because I can do this. I've always been intuitive. My guidance for people has literally several times led to marriages for couples that were struggling, or healed relationships for different couples. And I was like, okay, I need to do this. So I took a course to become a life coach, and originally was just doing regular life coaching. And my skills started growing so quickly that my business wasn't keeping up with my skills, and I was kind of dragging the business along with the new things that I was figuring out that I could do. And it was a very tumultuous time, I guess you would say, because I was figuring out all this inner world stuff and dealing with all of it, to the point that I kind of let the outer world fall a little bit to pieces. And I had a couple of friends that I made in the industry, and a psychic who told me that I was actually channeling 9 different realms at all times through my subconscious. So she said, that's why you're so tired all the flipping time. That's why you have mad energy one day and no energy the next, because you were actually pulling all of this information in. And for quite a while, I had so many people telling me that even amongst our community, I was unique in a way that they'd never seen, and they didn't fully understand. So all of that combined, I started listening to my intuition. What do I need to do next? What am I passionate about? And the reason that I got into specifically parenting coaching was because I was seeing so many people dealing with stuff that happened when they were so young. And it just broke my heart that we couldn't stop those things from happening. When you have a 40-year-old man on the phone bawling his eyes out about something his mom said to him when he was 6, there's a problem that needs fixing. And so I made the commitment to start branching out and doing it specifically for parents, although I maintain doing my one-on-ones with anyone as well. So it's really just been a snowball effect. I started actually coaching a year ago, but yeah, it's just been one thing after another, very, very quick. So
yeah, fascinating.
Well, you're obviously really insightful on this stuff. So
I enjoy talking about it.
Yeah, that's why you're here, I guess.
Yeah.
Gabby and I met through an Abraham Hicks meetup.
Yeah.
And I probably told you when we talked on the phone a little while back that, this show really came out of that because we weren't getting deep enough in those gatherings in the conversation.
Right.
He and I both, we wanted juicier stuff,
Right.
And the stuff that you're talking about right now from the beginning here, this was outside of the Abraham stuff already. So,
right.
And
I love Abraham, but Abraham very much keeps it kind of surface level because they are here for the beginners. They don't even take it to deeper levels because they're here to kind of funnel everybody in.
Right. And we, I'm not going to go farther than that, but we just said there's more, and we want more, and we want to talk about stuff that has a little more impact.
Absolutely.
And, so that's why we brought you onto the show.
Thanks. Yes.
So, I don't know what I want to ask.
I really, identified with what you were saying. Like older men could really broke down into tears because of it seems like the wounds that were received or the programming that happened early in life. They have such depth. Definitely. Yes. More lasting and more impactful than anything that happens later, right? So it makes total sense to go there for healing, right? And so when it comes to this question, okay, what do I do with this? Because oftentimes it's kind of like in your subconscious, right?
Right.
And so how do you override this? Because it's got this very strong imprint, right?
Yes.
So that
I was just saying, how do you discover it in the first place?
Discovering is one thing. Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, you can know that something's not right, but putting your finger on it, that's a whole nother ballgame.
Well, there are so many different ways to do it. And first, I always like to tell people, you don't want to just go and get rid of stuff, because sometimes when people first explore this, a lot of people just want to go and get rid of all of it. Let me just go and get rid of all of this programming. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is that some programming is actually serving you at the moment, and just going and getting rid of it is going to bring you to your knees. One big mistake that I made when I started this journey was not having a consistent coach that I was working with throughout getting rid of the stuff, because I didn't have someone to say, okay, stop, put in some work and stop getting rid of the gunk for a minute, because you're driving yourself nuts. But the way that we actually discover it is when something's ready to be released, it comes up. It just does. It may be that you start struggling with money. It may be that you start having a series of bad moods or bad tempers. Anytime the full moon is active, pay very close attention, because the full moon is a perfect time for releasing. And so the full moon will specifically bring up a lot of old stuff that's ready to go and be cleared. So there are a few different ways that you can actually release it once you've figured it out. And figuring it out could be just meditating, or talking with an emotion code practitioner, or someone who does hypnosis. Any of those types of practices, they can help you find it. You want to make sure that you're going to someone who is responsible and is going to check with your subconscious before actually just releasing stuff from you. And I say that because I see so many people who are coaching who maybe don't even mean anything bad by it, but who will mess people up because they aren't responsible for what they're doing, and they don't fully understand what they're doing. So you want to make sure of that, first of all. Rant there. But once you figure out what it is that's there are several different ways. So for me, every time the full moon comes around, and even right before the new moon, because the new moon is perfect for creating, I'll get a shower and I will ask that anything that is no longer serving me, that I can get rid of easily, just go down the drain. That I'm done with, just go away. I'm good. That takes care of things that aren't, so anything that has, if you imagine plants that have kind of started to come up and their roots are kind of sticking out, and after a heavy rain, they wash away. That's what that's good for. Another task that I have some of my clients do, and that I actually promoted on my Facebook recently, is actually going into a visualization where, for instance, at one point I realized that I was very, very angry with my later elementary, early middle school self. I hated her. She was overweight. She didn't know how to do her hair. I hated her glasses. I hated the way she interacted with people. I hated her emotions. And I sat in my visualization, I sat in a chair opposite her, and I just lit into her. And a lot of people are scared to say the things out loud. They're scared to say they hate that version of themselves because it seems so awful. But after I was able to get out my hatred and my self-loathing and my anger, the tears streaming down my face, then she was able to say to me how she was feeling, how broken she was, how she felt like no one loved her. And then I was able to hold her and comfort her. And that began healing some of that self-hatred, self-loathing, self-doubt. Another thing that you can do is using the emotion code, which to do that, you'll use muscle testing to check which trapped emotions are ready to be released or which heart walls are ready to be released. And then you'll release them using either the magnetic frequency in your fingers or a higher powered magnet. You can also do hypnosis. There are also a few different types of breathing releases where once you find the trapped emotion, again, you can release it. Mm-hmm. So there are all sorts of ways to do that. Personally, Reiki is good as well. A word on caution, like with Reiki or with things where you're not being, some people will do the releases without helping your conscious mind to understand what's going on. I'm a big believer in allowing the conscious mind in on the conversations between the person who's helping you and your subconscious mind, because frequently if you release something but your conscious mind still thinks it's a problem, for instance, if you've been dealing with money blocks and it's been released subconsciously but you still think you have money blocks, then you can continue to create the same cycle, and even though the issue is gone. Once you can actually consciously understand, okay, we've released that, it's much easier to let it go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
The conscious mind helps in programming the subconscious.
Yes,
But you can affirmations, right? Is the same thing. You just keep repeating.
Affirmations is helpful, but again, it's the same as when you're creating programs. Is that there are two different ways to do it. You can either use repetition or trauma. Things like the emotion code is going to be the equivalent of a trauma, so it'll be much more quick. Affirmations are wonderful, and I definitely recommend that people use them, but they're repetition, and it's going to take much longer if you don't add something with it.
I was only that came up just as an example of the conscious mind,
right,
programming the subconscious.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, if you would, because this emotion code,
mm-hmm.
You're obviously it's second nature to you, but I don't know whether Gabi's ever heard of it. I haven't.
Okay.
So you want to?
I actually, the name of the person who created it has gone out of my head. But what he realized is that we each have an electromagnetic field, and that electromagnetic field is what is carrying all of these different trapped emotions. So some of them coming, like I said earlier, from ancestors, 25 generations back or more. Some of them we create. And so what a practitioner of that, a practitioner of the emotion code will actually do is they will muscle test. They'll take on, in my case, I use myself as a proxy. So I'll take on a person's essence and I'll muscle test to make sure I've taken on their essence. I will ask the subconscious questions. So let's say you've been having, one of my clients recently, she'd been having shoulder pain. So I asked, is there any trapped emotion that's going on that's creating this shoulder pain that we can release now? The answer was yes. And we went through a series of trapped emotions that had been happening and had been leading up to this shoulder pain. And we released them by using the magnetic frequency in our fingers. You just kind of run your fingers over that field front to back. And you do it a certain number of times depending on how deeply embedded it is. And it literally just helps the electromagnetic field itself to release the trapped emotion. So it employs both the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the electromagnetic field. So it's doing several different things at the same time. You can also find heart walls through that method, which when we use trapped emotions to create a heart wall, but usually heart walls are created through trauma. So it's very interesting because our mind will use specific material to create it. I've had people have walls made of thorns that are 50 feet out. And just we go in and we release each trapped emotion that has built that wall until the wall is gone. I released one on myself a little too willfully and managed to have chest pains for the entire next day, so bad like it felt like I was having a heart attack.
Hi, this is Tim Starr. Thanks for joining me and Gabi on the universe between your ears. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for a little while. And we'd like to see you again. So be sure to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming the podcast from, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes or whatever the hell else is out there. We want to see you again. We also want to hear from you. So let us know what you think of each episode. Let us know if you got an idea for a future episode that you think would be just killer. Absolutely, let us know. All right? Thanks again, and we will see you next time around. Bye-bye.